Welcome to the session. We are going to talk about a little bit about diagramming, visual architecture, and different kinds of tools. What we can do, what we can use to create those diagrams. Right. So first, we are going to start with a little bit of architecture diagram, why it is important, and we are going to go ahead with a little bit about C4 model. It's a way of seeing architecture diagrams, right? Like, so how you can actually explain an architecture diagram in a nice manner. And then we will see how we can actually, what are the challenges with the existing tools, which most of you might have used to create that kind of C4 models. And then we will go into the code-driven approach, how you can use code itself to create diagrams. Then we will be looking at the different tools which you can utilize to create these diagrams. And once that is done, then there will be a small demo for one of my favorite tool. We will explain it in a little bit detail. I will take you through all how you can create diagrams. We will co-create a diagram, hopefully, some systems. And then, I will also explain about why did I like this tool on top of the other tools, right? So we will be, hopefully, demo will go fine. So we will have some nice diagram at the end of the sessions. So that is what we are going to follow. Let's get to it. So I think I know many of you people already, so I'm not going to give any more introduction about myself. For those who don't know me, my name is Prashant. Java developer, working as a Java developer right now. Been with experience with Java, Kotlin, front-end, DevOps, different kind of things like that. So, yeah, so among you who all actually worked on a system, like you joined a new project and the project is already there, existing project, how many of you had that kind of experiences? I think almost all of us had that experiences, right? Like you go into a new system, day one, you will get a hell lot of documents inside the Confluences, right? Go through those documents, you will understand what this system is all about, right? How many of you actually read the entire documents inside those Confluences? So this is where visual architecture comes to your aid, right? That I have seen in many places where one set of documentation is literally written, like from start to the end, there are a lot of text in it. Then another is like, okay, someone is actually doing a video about what this system architecture looks like. And you have a 1 hour video, you need to go through this entire video to understand what exactly it is. This is where the visual architecture comes into picture, where if you had diagrams, right, interactive diagrams to explain the systems, right? So that will guide your understanding of this particular project. So it also helps you when you're actually gonna communicate, like say for example, tomorrow someone else join your team, right? In that point in time, you need to explain the system architecture to someone else. At that point in time, you can explain the systems much better way if you have a visual aid to do it, right? And also, say for example, you are actually going to talk to someone who is not technical. If you go and talk about technical jargons, they won't understand anything about it. So it is good if you have a visual aid to show them, okay, this is how your system works, right? And also, many of us, right, in our career, we already seen that how much time we actually spend in maintaining the systems than creating from the scratch. So whenever there is a maintenance things comes in, you always needs to know what your systems looks like. Need to understand it so that you can actually support it in the production, and also as adding new features, maybe all those things. To do all those things, you need to know what the system architecture looks like, right? And to do this, of course, always we tell that people that, okay, visual diagrams helps, but if you see the normal architecture diagrams, you have like, again, there are problems with the normal architecture diagrams. The problems are like, it will be always detailed architecture diagram. You don't know where it starts, how deep it is actually going. You have no idea about like how many such diagrams are there existing in the organizations. You might see one Confluence page, there is one diagram about the system, same diagram represented in a different way in somewhere else. This is where C4 model comes in. So it has been developed by a person named Simon Brown in around 2006 and 2008. And this is basically what he suggested was that a system architecture you should see as a map. Have you seen Google Maps, right? Everyone are using Google Maps. If I am actually going to, I don't know, like Tabish, right? Like if I ask you, where are you from? He usually says that Pune, because I don't know in and out of Pune. So he will start with that Pune. Then I will say, where in Pune, right? You will say that maybe I don't know where exactly, but Kalyani Nagar, right? So in Kalyani Nagar, I stay in Kalyani Nagar. Where in Kalyani Nagar? Near to Cerebrum IT Park, right? So you are actually digging into the where he lives. So where at the end you will see exactly the exact address where he lives, right? So this is what CF4 model says. So you start with setting a context. So what this system does. Then you go into detail about it's when he's created the C4 model. Why C4 name is basically there are 4 parts of it. One is context, second is container, third is component, and fourth is code. So this container, don't think that it is Docker containers, because it's not. So in this set, like we start with that setting the context of the systems, right? So that is where the system context comes in. So you will tell that on a very high level, what does the system do? And then you will go in deep, one level in. So what are the different things are there inside the systems? Then we will go one more level deep. Maybe like you can think like the containers as a deployable unit, like your database is a container. You can consider as a database as a container. You have an API layer, which is a container. You have a front-end layer, which is another container. So it is basically, you can think that as a deployables, right? Like, so that is where the container comes in. And the components are each and every different things inside that container. So for example, you might be publishing messages into a Kafka container while you are saving something into real databases, right? Like, so the publishing is one of your component in your API. Right? So you explains it in a way, like we start at the very high level, which is useful for when you are actually talking to a non-technical persons. Then you will dive deep to a technical audience, saying that, okay, hey, these are the different components of your containers of your systems. Then you go in even in deeper, where you are actually going to talk about the components. Those are those, and code. Code, of course, is whatever usually no one uses code because it is literally the code level. And these days, you don't need to create diagrams with the codes. It will come up in your IDs, just use those tools. So by doing so, you can actually cater your communications, so like which level of communication you need to do it with whatever stakeholders or to whom you are actually talking to. So this is where C4 comes in. So there are like the main thing which you need to understand is this for modeling of it. So any systems, right? Like if you can think of the project which you are part of and create a C4 system architecture diagram for that. Or maybe like say for example, I'm a part of order service team in an e-commerce website. So I will have a C4 architecture. I can create a C4 architecture diagram for that with my consumers as and then say the bigger context will be like, okay, creating order as a bigger context over there, right? Or even I can actually go and level up, saying that, okay, hey, e-com website, the customer is using e-com website as a system context, right? So you can create different levels of diagram over there. So now, as we said, we can actually create diagrams about it. Like, how can we create these diagrams, right? So traditionally, I haven't noted down all the tools which we usually use for the diagramming, but there are many common ones. One of the very recent ones which many of us uses is Miro. Right, like Miro, where you can actually explain the things in really nice way. By the way, Miro also supports C4 architecture diagram. If you haven't seen the templates, it is there in the Miro as well. Or Lucid Charts, Draw.io, all those things, right? Like where you are actually using these tools to create the diagrams. But the challenges which you are gonna face in these problems, or in these diagramming tools are basically these diagrams after some time becomes obsolete. Like I've many places where I think many of you also might have experienced that you go to a Confluence page, you see a diagram, you understand the system, then you ask someone, oh, by the way, that diagram is obsolete, it's not anymore. Correct, right? So this happens, the reason is because, first of all, it's the people who created are not the ones who will be consuming the most of these diagrams. The people who are actually coming after them are the ones who is consuming these diagrams the most. And for them, first of all, they might not be even aware that, okay, there are diagrams here and there, right? Like, so whenever they make changes in your system's architecture, any components or any of those things, most of probably what happens is that they will not go and update the diagrams. There are a couple of reasons for it. One is not knowing where exactly it is. Second is most probably these diagrams are PNGs or SVG files, right? And what happens in this situation is, like, if you want to update it, you need to recreate that diagram inside the same tool. And that is a cumbersome process, right? And assume you are creating it, you have a file which actually says that, okay, draw.io, they have kept the link where the diagram is, amazing. You went over there, you added a box over there. The lines which is connecting to this box doesn't touch each other. You spend another 1 minute to get that lines to be looking nice, or like whichever way it is pointing is not correct. You are finding the tools to do it, right? So these are the, like, to maintain it, it is really difficult to do it. And of course, it is really cumbersome process to do it. And the second thing is that, okay, how you make sure that multiple people can work on these diagrams at the same time. So maybe in my team, I am actually updating the diagram. I don't know how many cases you might face this, but someone else can't. You can't collaborate it well, right? If I do make a change in these diagrams, it is like, okay, I made these diagrams, or if I am actually working on something and creating a PNG, it is a final product of it. So collaboration becomes really difficult, right? And of course, and many of us, I'm one of those people, it's really difficult to go to Confluence and write something because of the markdowns, how it is. Like, I'm so damn comfortable with my IDE, right? Like, where I am actually writing the code. If I have that, if I have a tool which I can actually use it in my IDE, I would be more comfortable in writing documents and more comfortable in creating diagrams as well. Unfortunately, that is not true for many of these tools. And of course, this is also there in, like, you have seen that, okay, people will be more inclined to write markdown files in your editor than you going and adding it in the Confluences. So that is where the code-driven diagramming comes. So all this to help with all these problems, right? Like, there are many different tools in the market right now where you can use some DSLs to create diagrams, right? It will help you to, I mean, it help in many ways. It's like, basically, you can actually check in these codes, right? You just writing the code, and the tool will create the diagrams for you, right? So if you want to make changes inside those diagrams, it is just updating the code, just like how you will update your own whatever, wherever you're working on, right? It's just adding, maybe there is a new thing which is coming. Okay, right now you are starting to publish something to Kafka. You need to add to that to your architecture diagram. It is just adding 2 lines of code in some file, and there you go. You have a new amazing diagram over there. Now, the next step, what you can actually think about is, like, say, for example, when I have this capability to create diagrams dynamically whenever I want from my IDE, put it in your CI/CD pipeline, right? So when you are doing this, whenever you are making the code changes, you have your diagrams next to your code itself, right? Code for the diagrams of your systems which you're working on. You can go and update that and add that into your CI/CD pipeline to publish those images as a PNG, whatever it is, and use that published artifact in your Confluences or wherever you're doing the documentation. So now, what have changed? We still have all those tools which are used by many corporations like Confluences and wherever it is, right? And now we have actually automated the process of creating the images, and we put that images closer to where it actually, what it actually represents, right? So now, as a programmer, right, you are actually picking up I don't know, like some big stories which you are maybe, like the example I'm going back to is like, okay, publishing to Kafka, right? You are developing that story. It is one more thing to change, one more file. You forgot about it. Someone with whom you are pairing, he can remind you. Or if you don't follow pair programming, there is a review process. There you go. Like, you can actually say that, okay, did you update this file as well, right? It is as simple as that. So it makes your life easier. It helps you to basically to enhance the collaboration inside the team. Multiple people can actually work on the same code, and the Git will take care of how to integrate with these things, right? So that is where the code-driven diagramming helps you with. So now, so what are different types of tools which is out there to help you with this, right? So I'm gonna give you a few tools. Like, it actually helps you in different places, in different ways, and all these tools, actually we discuss about C4 model. You can create C4 models in all these tools, but some of the tools are much better suited for this kind of C4 model architecture diagrams than the others. So with no order, I think this is one of the most common thing which we always seen is, I don't know how many of you have used Plant UML in your projects. Any show of hands? Cool. Awesome. How many of you actually put this in your CI/CD pipeline to auto-generate these images and publish it? Right? So for those people who actually have Plant UML in your projects, this is the next step you can take. Automate it, right? And that will add values to your project as well. So this is a simple Plant UML, and what it does is basically it explains an e-com website in a very high level. Please don't quote me on the steps which I did. Maybe I got it wrong as well, but this is just an example. And what we are doing over here is a sequence diagram, not a C4 model diagram. I purposefully choose sequence diagram because this is a tool which is amazing for C4 diagrams. Sorry, amazing for sequence diagrams, not for C4 models. It will create a lot of complexities if you want to create C4 models. So that is the reason I actually chosen the sequence diagram. But yes, this is something, a first step, baby step into code-driven diagramming, right? Like you can start with simple Plant UML diagram which actually explains you how to draw a sequence diagram. Outcome of that code is how in the right side, right? This is how that code comes up when you render it. So next one is, this might be quite famous. Many people have seen this. This is called as Mermaid. So how many of you have used Mermaid? Yeah, so a few more folks than Plant UML, I think. This is the same sequence diagram which we created in the Plant UML. It has been used using the Mermaid. And this is how it renders the sequence diagram. So it's the exact same code. I hope ChatGPT does its job, and it actually created the same thing for me. So yeah, this is how Mermaid actually renders the same thing.
Both these tools use DSS, right?
Sorry?
Both these tools use DSS, not code-driven. These are not code-driven.
It is. Yes. So code-driven in the sense like, okay, you need to write, like not like code, right? Like it is not like, okay, you can actually create. I will touch upon this, like Pythons, right? These are DSLs, not
reverse engineering.
No. It is actually the DSLs. This is the DSL which you are seeing over here, and we will come to that DSL a little bit more. And that this is, once you have done it, then it will automatically renders this in your wherever you want. In your IDE, it has supports to almost all these tools which we are discussing over here. You have IDE supports over there. So in your code, just like how the markdowns are, if you have written this code over there, it will render that image for you as well, right? So Mermaid, it actually has, like, I just wanted to give another flavor of the same thing. It's called as journey diagram, right? It is actually useful for explaining the journeys which users does take it. And this is another diagram which you can see that, okay, hey, there are steps over there, and you are actually trying to create a journey over there, right? So this is a different representation of the same thing. Again, this diagram is also showing the same, the steps which people uses to create an order or buy something from an e-com website.
Journey is not available in Plant UML?
It is. This is a little bit more fancier, so I thought, okay, keep it here, that's all. So now these two tools, Mermaid and Plant UML, you can create C4 models, diagrams using those tools, but that is not really useful because the support for it is there, but the code which you need to write, the DSLs which you need to write, is a little bit more complex than what you want it to be. So that is where the structurizer comes in. So Structurizr is a tool which is created by the same person who created that. I mean, who came up with that C4 model, Simon Brown. So he created this Structurizr. So it is a tool where you can again the same. Unfortunately this looks bad over here. So maybe I can actually show in the code when we are actually doing the demo. I can show the code over there. So this again explains the same thing. So there is a difference over here. So this is where the C4 actually comes into picture. I don't know how. Cool. So it is actually working. Jiffy. Thanks to Jiffy. So what you can see is that that code which I have written over the left side, right, creates a user journey over there. So what it actually does is that if this is the first screen. Oops. Yeah, so these three blocks, right? That is the system context which I have done. Okay, I have an actor who is actually a user who is gonna use my web applications, and it has a database to it, right? So I'm just setting the system context over there, and then I go deep into different levels like containers, different systems over there. So this is one of those tools which you can actually use for creating C4 diagrams and these kind of interactive images. This is where Structurizr has a added bonus point over Mermaid and Plant UML, where you have one code, it actually created two different images for you, and that images you can actually go from one image to the next image, navigation, right? So you can see that, okay, I'm actually clicking on a zoom icon over there in this middle block, which actually take you to the next diagram. So it is much more easier for when you have this kind of diagram, it is much more easier for you to actually navigate and show to the people how it is gonna work. No, it actually, so this is interesting, right? So this is actually rendered. I will show you that it's actually a Docker container. It's an application itself, right? Like the reason why it is an application is like you can actually scale this in your entire organization, right? Like so you have a very big architecture diagram, and you have your own teams can contribute to your own block, how it is going to look like, and it will create a navigation where how you can actually navigate through the systems, the architecture, so understand that where your system fits in. So it is its own, and if you want to do it, you can actually from the tool itself, you can create Plant UML, you can create Mermaid diagrams, you can create PNGs, you can create SVGs, but when you actually convert those into those items, right, like it will create many images. So for example, this will create two different images, one for the system context level, the second for the container levels. Yes. Yes, you can. You can drill down in much deeper. I have just show you just two levels, which is like, okay, very high level system context, and the second being the containers. I can even drill down much deeper. I will demo that in using the Structurizr itself in 5 minutes, hopefully. Yeah.
So when you say an entire organization can use it, how will each team like combine their Structurizr templates?
So you have a single code base where you can actually contribute to. Assume that, like, or like I don't want to solutionize over here, but you can actually think of like each block is owned by one single team, right? And then you are actually gonna, maybe you won't like one block is where you are actually gonna worry about. You actually add your architecture into that one. But because this is actually a system like on a very high level, you can actually then see that, okay, how this navigation works. How the systems is like, say for example, if it is an e-com systems, you need all the components to work together to create an e-com systems, right? The similar way, the architecture, when you're seeing it, it is an e-com system, you have it each into like microservices. Similarly, right, like in this code there you have like small block where you actually own it and then you update it, right? It's your responsibility to keep it. Similar like how we create microservices. Cool. So this is the another tool which we can use for creating C4 diagrams. And this is one of the tools which we are going to go in deep. And a couple of points is that it's created based upon React and web components. So it is more visually pleasing to the eye than the other ones which I have seen so far. And it also gives you some GitHub actions, some ways to actually integrate with your CI/CD pipelines. And also it can, similar to Structurizer, it almost supports almost every feature of Structurizer. On top of it, it gives you a little bit more added benefits. And those added benefits we are gonna see in the demo. So my recommendation, right, like if you are going into the C4, like C4, right? That is my recommendation for creating the C4 model diagrams. But if you just want to use like sequence diagram, then the best tool is out there is like Mermaid or the planned UMLs, right? So that is much more simpler, much more easier to integrate into your workflows. So that is where you will get the most benefit out of it. And we are gonna go into a little bit of demo. So yeah, glad that you actually pointed out. IcePanel is amazing tool. So one of the reason I didn't put it over there, it is actually a paid one. So what we are seeing over here is it doesn't come near to IcePanel, but it almost does the same job as IcePanel, which like it has some extra advantages over the Structurizer, and like C4 actually does that, and this is an open source. So that's the only reason which I didn't put IcePanel over there. But yes, if you get a chance, please go ahead and see IcePanel. That has an amazing features. But yeah, it is a paid tool.
I think that will actually tell you whether it's out of date as well. I think that actually links to your code, I think.
Yeah, there are a little more these things, like say for example, Structurizer does the ADRs. You can actually create ADRs and then link it to ADR Structurizer. This doesn't support it. IcePanel do support those things as well. So that is where it actually adds a lot of value. But like C4, at least right now, it doesn't support it, but it has a really active community right now. And I could see that, okay, even like a month back, there are not many features when I was actually exploring it, that are not many features which was not there, is there right now. So I'm hoping that those features also comes into this open source. Hopefully once many people knows about these tools, then they will also contribute to it, make it better. So yeah, so that is the difference between IcePanel and like C4.
So does it support embedding in Markdown, like
Mermaid, yes, you can actually do it. Like C4, I don't think so right now. It has its own CLI though, so you can actually create from using your pipelines, you can create it. Or it can actually do static web pages, right? So if you can actually host that, right, then you can utilize this tool as well. Yes, yes. So natively it doesn't. If you see, if people who use Mermaid and planned UML, if you put it in your Markdown, it will automatically renders over there in your ID. Like that, it doesn't support. But yeah, these are some new tools which is coming up. So I hope in future this will come up. Yes.
the code that we write for generating these diagrams, is that code different from the code we write for the functionality to happen?
It is. I mean, the left side, which like whenever I was showing you this right, like this is the code which you are gonna write to create these diagrams, right? It is different from what you have written in your code. Like say for example, like I don't know, like basket service, you have written a lot of thousands of lines of code. This basket service is I think you can see that like here, like basket to database, customer to basket. So this is what actually creates that journey over there. So yes, it is different from the code which you have written. But yeah, it's a DSL which you need to, there are some patterns which you need to learn. There is a little bit of starting, like where you need to learn the patterns for each, but most of the things what I have seen is that all these tools, patterns are very similar. So once you learn one of them, it will be easy for you to learn all the others.
One more quick thing on the like C4. So let's say we are using it to generate ADR or something. So can we fill in other text details?
So like C4 right now, as far as I know, it doesn't support ADRs. But say for example, Structurizer, yes, you can. So
From this we'll build more like a image toolkit and then we'll link it in the
not really. Actually, it supports in its own ecosystem. You can actually create ADRs over there.
So we can write text.
Yes. So it comes at its own ecosystem is there where you can actually create ADRs. It's kind of alternative to Confluence, but I don't know how many organizations will buy that. But yeah, it can actually do that as well. So there are advantages over there, but I don't see many organization actually uses first of all code driven or writing code to create diagrams. I haven't seen that many. So it's a kind of something which is missing, and I feel bad for it. And my own personal experience actually made me to look for these things and find it out. And especially when you are in a project where you are doing migration work, you have some 2000 the code which was created in 2000 or 2010, you don't have documents, you don't know what it is actually doing. Maybe it is written in CPP, you need to go into the code to understand it, but now you need to learn how CPP works to understand what it's actually doing. I wish they have created some really nice diagrams like this. So I don't want that to repeat for the people who are coming after us 5 years down the line. So these tools will help them at least to do that.
So recently I have used the GitHub plugin, okay, GitHub Copilot plugin. And based on your code base, you don't have to write anything extra. Based on your code base, it will identify what this code base, this repo is doing, and it will give you the nice summary. So I'm hoping in near future, GitHub Copilot again will come up. It will read the actual code and it will come up with those diagrams, C4 diagrams with JNAI and something. So I don't think we will even need that tool.
Hopefully, if that happens, then I am so happy. I will be so happy.
What we can do is, right, like we can use these tools to generate these diagrams, but along with that, having the textual summary, right, that we can do it with the GitHub Copilot. So even the README pages, most of the times in the repo, they are outdated. Right?
Correct.
We can use the GitHub Copilot to generate that summary.
Correct.
Nice and used it.
So there is one thing which AI or like GitHub Copilot needs to improve upon to create such kind of this kind of diagrams. One is that Copilot has the context of where you are right now. That is your single code base, right? That is where from it actually reads it. So if it reads the entire organization's repos, right, and then understands, okay, when I am saying that, okay, call order service, it is actually talking about order service code base, then it will add more values. So I haven't seen that till now. So until that happens, hopefully, like in a couple of years, we will be talking about, okay, how AI can actually create these diagrams. Maybe I will update my talk at that point in time to come up with some tools about it.
I'd be very impressed if they could get that to work. Because what is an application? What is a context? The context could be multiple services. But yeah, maybe.
Cool. Yay, demo time. I hope it goes well. Let's see.
We got an Indian. What could go wrong?
Can you people still hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So, yeah. All of you can see it? Cool, awesome. So what we are going to do is basically to create some flight system. I was like thinking that, okay, we will do a demo of same ecom system, but it is really complex to come up with in like 10 minutes. So what we are going to do is like, and I was sitting in flight, so I thought, okay, why not this one, right? Like, so it's a home page. The system has a home page where you are going and then entering the details, and it comes back with all the flight details for whatever you queried for. So this is the entire flight system. Like, you can't buy tickets. It's simply out there, right? So this is what we are kind of create in a visual representation, right? So the very first thing, and who all are there in my system? So I have this in my this flight info system. I have an actor. So the actor is a user or a consumer who actually gonna search this. And of course, my system is, that is why I'm actually gonna use systems, and then there are some containers. I'm planning to use Next.js for the front end. For some reason, I'm not gonna use, right, like Next.js itself. So yeah, so and then I have an API, and of course, I'm gonna write it in Kotlin. Have a database, right? So these are the containers, and let's see who, like, if we get time, we will add the publishing events, right? Like whenever someone is searching, I'm gonna publish that search to a queue so that airlines can actually get that messages and jack up the prices, right? And then there are some external systems. So here the external systems are the airline systems. I don't know in airline domain which all systems are the systems called. So we are going to call it as Indigo system and Air India system, right? Again, these are the flights which I'm coming. Well, the Air India is the one which I came in, and Indigo is the one which I'm flying back. Awesome, right? So, and this is the reason why we are actually created the specifications. So we actually created very first. We create the specifications. Inside the specification, we actually create these elements, which all are there. Now we are going to model it, right? So I'm going to create model. By the way, I'm using VS Code, and there is a plugin which is there, and that's the reason why you are seeing this auto suggestions and everything coming up in the right place. So I'm going to create a model. Let's say first is a user. He's an actor. So, and what it does, this is the name, and I'm going to put some description to describe. This is the text which goes in, right? Lena was saying that, okay, the text which you need to have more context about what it is actually about. So you can create descriptions inside it. So let's start with this, and we will create 2 blocks first, and then we will render it and see, then from there we will go. So this is the description. So user who searches the flight, right? And my flight info system. Right, so I created the model. So I have two things. One is user and our system. Now let's view that, right? So inside the views, I need to create an index view. So I'm gonna do that and include everything which is out there. Let's go. So it created a diagram over here. So it is 2 blocks are there, a user and flight info systems. So you have these blocks over there. So now let's go ahead and say that, okay, hey, user is going to use this flight info systems, right? So I'm going to create the relationship right now. So this is how you will create relationships. User, flight info systems, users. Right, so now you can see that, okay, it's dynamically create that relationship. It says that, okay, user uses the flight info systems. I can actually add more text to it. Like, say, for example, info. I need to add more info to it. No, sorry. Let's create a description for it. Sorry, no. We will come to that a little bit later. I think I got it wrong over there. Cool. So now this is. You all can still hear me? Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Oh. So then we need to wait.
Prashant, electricity is upset because you didn't write the test for your code. You didn't do the TDD.
Yeah.
Code for test.
Or you did some cloud strike at like Prasad, it was Lights C4 you are using, right?
Correct.
It's a plugin.
It's a plugin inside the VS Studio. It can actually have its own project. If you want to create as a project, you can actually create a workspace for it, and then you can write the same thing inside this workspace. So I have created a folder over here as econf and ecom.c4. This you can actually maintain it as a code base. We can actually refactor it out, things which is common and all those things you can actually do it. So the plugin actually looks into all this .c4 files, and it renders this diagram. That is how it renders this diagram. You can use CLIs to create this same diagram. If you have the code, you can actually create CLI to create this diagram as well. Cool. So let's say, like, let's define this flight info system a little bit more. Right. So I'm gonna have an API. All right. I'm gonna have a web layer. Also a DB to save or fetch all this informations from. Right. So if you notice that I described all those things, but none of those things came up. Right. So this is where the views are. Views are there where it's, if it is not if it is defined but it doesn't add it inside the views, it will not show up in the diagrams. So you need to create that this view for that one. So let's create that. Again, I'm going to include this include keyword. I don't know whether you have noticed there is a slight change in the diagram, that zoom icon, the moment I actually included it. So this along with this include keyword, you can actually exclude something from this context, right? Like if I've written an info system inside that, all these APIs are there. For some reasons you don't want to show up something, you can exclude something specifically as well. And the same way how we are including.
But can you only include information that's currently within that, or can you reference external documents?
You can, like it needs to be in the same workspace though.
Okay.
So you can actually extract out this as a separate C4, and then you can actually use that over here.
You can't point it at a URL.
No, you can actually put URL just to get more informations, but it can't actually import from some other places like library kind of imports. Those kind of things doesn't happen. But yeah, like say for example, this tool requires all the C4 files, which is required to create the diagrams in one single workspace. That's the requirement for them. So you can see that, okay, this actually comes over here. So this is a system context level diagram. So I goes in, I have all these nice blocks over there with no relationship between them. We need to put this relationship in. So I actually said that, okay, flight info systems, the users uses flight info systems. Actually, user uses the web, right? So that is where the user uses it. So I actually changed to flight web, but the tool understands that, okay, that means that, okay, info system is the one which is actually using it. So when I went back to the system context level, so it understands that, okay, it is actually talking to the flight info systems, and it automatically create this relationship from user to flight info systems. But when I go in, it knows that, okay, it is to the flight web which they are interacting with, right? So let's add or more details into it, right? So to flight API, right? So now you can see that there is a complete thing, like user uses the flight info systems. You go in, you understand, okay, there is a web, there is an API, flight DB uses the flight DB. But then these are blocks, and it doesn't visually appeal. You need to read it to understand what is happening over there. So let's add some more style to it, right? Like say for example, I don't want my DB to look like this. So I am going to style that. Let's say DB is going to look like a cylinder right now. So you can see that, okay, this is where it comes in. So let's say I want to add a little bit more informations, like what technology I am using for this DB. Let's say I'm going to use MongoDB for some reason. Right? So you can see that diagram comes with a little bit more informations over there with technology as MongoDB. Again, it's not, sorry.
So I thought these diagrams will be added as a PNG file at the end, right? Like when we add.
Correct.
All the tweaking and everything was still
So no,
interactions.
so you can create as a PNG if you want, but you can actually, like say for example, this can be a deployable, right? Like as a static web page. So if it is a web page, you can actually go to navigate through it. And so the tool will take care of that for you.
You are right now using Visual Studio Code for
Yes.
and a plugin on that.
Yes.
But this plugin might be using
Correct.
And what it generates, I think it's some extension file. I don't know. How does it open? Does it require any? Does it open in Chrome or any browser, or it requires some specific tools to?
So this one is actually just a preview, which actually uses it. So similarly, you can actually create a, like it. If you have a workspace, you can run that workspace. It's basically React and web components are behind the scenes. So you can just do a npm run dev, and you have this page. This what you are seeing in a browser, in your local browser, right? So you can then, if you can create this static web page out of it, and then you can embed it into your whichever systems it is, like Confluence, iFrames, or wherever it is, right? Like you can actually use those things, and then it will give you this nice navigations and stuff like that. Yes.
Does the CLI support custom plugins? This,
Sorry, come again.
like if you wanted to do some extra step before it compiles, does the CLI support?
At the end of the day, it is React, right? NPMs. You can do whatever you want, like JavaScript, right?
You cannot import links, but we did some handlebars for templating and
You can if you want to pre-process these things, you can. At the end of the day, it only looks for this diagramming only is looking at this C4 extensions, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, does this have version control? Like, can you roll back to a very old version?
So this code can be, I mean, it's just in GitLab, right? Like, sorry, Git, any Git. Yeah, it's same way. So you can actually have this version controlled, and multiple people can do it, and then let the Git do its job, than we worrying about those things.
And what are UML diagrams? Does it support all of them, or details?
So right now, this is, as the name suggests, it's a C4, right? You can actually convert this into the C4 diagram into a planned UML diagrams, but when you are getting the planned UML, it actually gives you the C4 representation of it. So it doesn't support the sequence diagramming and stuff like that. Cool. So yeah, anything like let's see how we can change it, right? So you can see this. I'm actually using some. I'm gonna give the MongoDB icon over here. So it also supports different types of iconographies, predominantly the tech, all this text, GCP and AWS. So you can use any of this typography, and you will get this nice over here. Sorry. No, right now, no. But as I said, right, if you like, because it is open source, if you want, you can create a version of yourself. This actually has imported all these icons from these three main things. If you want, you can actually use that and then create your own version for it. But I think I didn't see a need for it, because it supports almost everything, right? These libraries has almost everything what you want. So most probably there might not be a need for it to use a different images, until unless you need to put your company's icon or something like that. Cool. So I'm gonna just style it a little bit more on the browser. Let's say it's actually browser. So now you have a nice browser icon over there. You can see that web is in browser, right? And let's say this is using, right? And so now we have fetched all the informations about the flights, but we still haven't got the seat informations, right? So here is where we need to integrate with the external systems, right? So let's do that. So the API actually talks to, let's define that. Sorry. Let's start with Indigo. So let's see the flight APIs actually talks to Indigo. Cool. So now the API is actually talking to Indigo and Air India systems, but it is actually looks like as if like this we own it, because the color code you can see that okay it is not good. So I don't want any external systems to have a like same color as ours. So I'm gonna use a muted color. Right. So I just defined as a muted, and then you will get this visual representation. Okay, these systems doesn't belong to us, right? So same way, like let's see this flight info systems, and when I'm coming in this, right? So now let's go to the diagram a little bit, and let's see what is happening over here. So user uses this flight info system to retrieve the informations, and it actually uses the web to search for it. It actually fetch the informations from it, and it goes to the Indigo systems or Air India systems to get the seat info. But it doesn't give you the user journey feel, right? It still says that, okay, it uses it, but at what time it actually uses it, how it actually uses it. So this is where the dynamic view helps you to create these user journeys. So now what I'm gonna do is that inside this diagram, I'm gonna create a user journey, right? So let's go ahead and then do that. So it is called as dynamic view. Cool. So what it happens is that over here, I'm gonna create a user journey, like user, the element is actually gonna talk to the flight web, and I says that, okay, searches for the flights, and flight web goes to flight API, retrieves the flight information, flight API goes to the DB, fetches flight info, which and once we have that, API is gonna go and fetch it from the Indigo, get seat info for Indigo flights, and also goes to Air India. So now I have created a user journey. I don't know whether you can see it or not. 1 second. Let me lock it. Right. Okay, so it actually helps you to create user journeys in your diagram. So the same diagram which we created, now we have created a user journey. So you can tell, like, you can play it, and you can take along your colleagues or anyone who wants to know how the system works. So it says that, okay, user searches for the flights, comes to the web, right? It reads the flight informations, goes to the get the info. Once it gets the info, it actually gets it from the Indigo, and then the Air India flights. And of course, I didn't return it, but of course, you will return it as a next step. Again, you can see there is a not that great, because we are sequentially getting info from the Indigo and Air India, and we don't need to wait for one to come in. Let's do it, make it as parallel. Oops. Right, so It also support these kind of nice things, which actually says that these are now happening in parallel. So if I go here again, sorry. Right, searches for the flights, gets the info from the DB. Now you can see that it actually tells you that, okay, this is actually happening in parallel, right? So this, if you see, this is a very simple diagram which we have created over here. So you can actually add more info, whatever information you need into this diagrams. So I'm gonna show you a different diagram which I have already created, so that we also get time to see the structurizer version of it as well, right? So this is a diagram which I have created. It's very the same thing, slide a little bit more information over here. Let's go ahead and see that. So don't look at these terminologies and stuffs like that. I just wanted to show what it is capable of. It is up to you to create amazing diagrams and documentations for it. You can see that some info boxes are coming up, right? Like you can see that users, it says that a user lands on the home page and user navigates to home page, and home page is coming from Adobe AEM, right? And then user enters the search query and click the enter. It goes to the flight server with search queries over there, and it actually fetch the informations, retrieve the flight information, again happening in the parallel, and it returns all the informations back to the browser, right? So this is the same diagram, little bit more informations over there. So these info blocks is up to you to use it, how you can actually give more informations about it. So you can actually plug in, and this as you might have noticed it, these are like, okay, you can whatever you want you can put it in, because it's actually closable and still usable as a diagram if you don't want it, right? So this is what you can actually do it with LikeC4, and this is exactly the reason why I really liked LikeC4 on top of the other tools which I already introduced to you people, especially for this specific use case where the user journeys are. Yeah, then.
So you said that you can't use libraries, right? So that means the code that you written can't be split in multiple files.
You can.
You can split it.
You can. So,
import that.
yes. So this is, you can see that right now, the entire diagram is 199 lines of code. So you can actually create as a separate, this specifications will never change, right? The specification is a one-time thing. So journeys will change, but the specifications will never change, right? So you can actually make that as a specs.c4, then import that over here. And views can actually change. So you can actually create different views and then import them over here, so that it will give you a little bit nice way of like extracting out the nice bits, and then you can create the diagrams out of that. Yes. Sorry, come again. Yeah, it is. I mean, at the end of the day, it is how you are going to represent it, right? Like, say, for example, you have external systems as, right? Like, okay, who are reading it, or it's say your internal systems itself. You can actually create these connections between the messaging queue and back to your system itself, right? Which actually reads about it.
Like just the way we are depicting the shape, can make it cylindrical to
Yeah.
mimic more like a cube kind of thing.
Yeah, for that, I won't put as a different boxes over there. Maybe you can actually uses the technology to make sure that icons, right? Like, so you can actually use icons to show that, okay, this is actually a SQS or I don't know, PubSub or Kafka or whatever it is, and it's all those icons are already there, so it is actually gives you different things. The reason is why I don't want to use different boxes is because this items, like, again, comes back to this, right? Like, so there are some of them are containers, some of them are components, right? So that visually, when you know that once you get that concept, okay, these are the components in my systems and this is the containers, it is easy for you to understand it when you are seeing a bigger, larger diagram, right? If you use a lot of boxes, like say for example, if I have a rounded one and spherical one and small changes, like all those things, right? Parallelogram or whatever it is, right? It actually creates a lot of overload, right? Like so you will be like looking at it, what am I looking at? So make the diagrams as simple as possible. Use this extra stuffs like the nodes or technology which you are using or the icons to represent what actually it has or what it does.
Prashant, you said about Miro integration.
Yes.
I mean, do we need to import the C4 file?
No, it is not like C4 what you are actually importing over there. It is a C4 template what you have. Over there, it is just that, okay, you have this different frames over there and you can interact with these frames. So you can create a diagram in one of the frame which is a system context, and when you click it, it automatically, Miro actually gives you that behaviors to go to from one frame to another frame. So it is quite easy to implement. If you want to use something like that, then like all tools like then Miro is the best place because it actually helps you to navigate through the frames and explain this much better.
Not understand this DSL.
No, it doesn't. You can't use this DSL inside the Miro. But it is just that, like if you're seeing like when you go to a Miro board, you can actually use any templates which is predefined. So there is a predefined C4 template which you can use in Miro. Yes.
Like, is it possible to show the same diagram in some, let's say, VR, like I'm working on some code, and that has a use case where this journey is defined for the first time, or I'm doing some re-iteration of that journey. So, when reviewing the VR, is it possible to somehow show it visually?
Amazing question. So the reason why I said it is amazing question is that feature is not there right now, but they are adding it. So that is why I said that, okay, this is actually active and there are many features like in ICE panel or ADR supports and stuff like that, right? It is not there yet, but this is one of the things which is actually coming up in hopefully in next iterations. And this dynamic view was not there. So until then, for me, ICE panel was the best one because ICE panel actually helps you do the exact same thing of user journeys, right? Like you have a diagram and then you can create ICE user journeys inside it. But they implemented it in, I think, 1.1, which is the current version, if I'm not wrong. Please don't quote me on it, but yeah, this is the, once it came for that, I mean, this has that, I think this becomes my favorite tool to look into.
Is there any tool available which can create this C4 file from my code?
Yes, of course, ChatGPT. By the way, that ecom one which you saw, the very first thing, right? I actually created by using ChatGPT. I just told them, okay, I have an ecom website. It has 3-4 things. Then this is what users are doing. Can you please create me a C4 diagram, structurizer code for it? The thing which it is doesn't do it is that I try to convert using that structurizer. I try to convert to like C4. It doesn't understand it. It actually gives me a like C4 code, uses that to render it, some error, give it back to the ChatGPT. It actually, oh, sorry, I'm going to fix it for you, again do it, then repeat the process. After a couple of times, I was like, I seen this somewhere, the same error. So I was actually repeating the same error. So yeah, that doesn't do well. But if you want to create a C4, ChatGPT.
Does any of the Git providers have plugin for it?
Like GitHub Actions do support it, so you can actually create these things using GitHub Actions. But GitLab, I don't think so. You need to create like Docker images. I mean, you can create a Docker image and then use it.
Integrate it into the pipeline?
So it's just as any steps in your pipeline, right? Like, so you can either, if it is you are hosting this in your same code base, then it is quite easy for you to do it, like inside the docs directory, for example, and use that and then host it over a Docker image and publish it to somewhere where you can actually utilize it. Yeah. So one. Oh yeah. Cool. That is also there. You can actually, inside the view, you can define how you want. I'm actually gonna, let's say, something which you can easily see is index. So let's see this. This is actually top to bottom. Let's make it as left to right, or to left, right. There you go. All right. I think that's. Oh, sorry. I will show you just one more thing. This is the structurizer code. It's a ecom one which I actually created, and this is how the code looks like. I don't know whether you can see that, and this is how the environment is going to look like. Right, there you go. So this is the structurizer. Using that C4 diagram, you can see a context, a system context over here. You go in, you will go to this systems, very badly designed ecosystem, right? So yeah, so you go into the product service, you have a list page, detail page, and an API. It reads from this one. And you can see the left side, right? These are the diagrams which is actually generated from that code, right? If you create as a PNG, this many PNGs will come up, right? So this is what, and it is quite easy. You can actually create PNGs. There you go. All these diagrams as a PNGs. You can use this to generate the UMLs and stuff like that if you want. In UML also you can represent it this by the way, but the thing is that the shapes and stuff like that needs a lot of, if you see that code, it will look really, really ugly. You even, like, I don't think that it is easy to read. It is really difficult to manage it. So yeah, please don't use it. I think that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Very insightful.
Thank you.